we will be continuing the discussion because it's such a big deal. Press freedom, it's a big deal, and we'll be having head of news at Love FM, Said Ali Yakub. He'll be joining us via Skype from Kumasi. Good afternoon to you. Very refreshing to see you, Said. And also on the phone will be Saidu Bomanjo. He is a journalist and administrator of GBC in the Upper West Bureau. Good afternoon to you too. All right, so if I have all the gentlemen set, let's have this interesting discussion. World Press Freedom Day, and we all know what the journey has been so far. We are being told that Ghana has been ranked 23 among 180 countries measured for media freedom. And that sounds like some good news, but of course, are we there yet, gentlemen? I would like to start with my experience as a journalist. For the past 11 years, I've had some of these issues coming up to me. I remember when I did a story on Omanjo, a school in Accra that did not have any roofing. And when the president put some fire on the DCE for that area, I kept having calls, threats of court actions, a whole lot. I also remember when I did a story on domestic violence. In fact, I nearly got arrested at the DOFSU office. Those are some of the obstacles I have faced being a journalist for the past 11 years. Share with us some of your experiences. Hello, Said. If you can hear me, I'm talking about experiences being a journalist and now an editor.
Aisha. Yes, we've come. Yes, Aisha, I can hear you.
Sure. So I was sharing.
Hello, Aisha.
Yes, I was sharing with you my experience as a journalist.
Hello, Aisha.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm saying that yes, we've come very far as assault of media personnel is concerned. Yes, in Ghana, we may not have experienced the situations of people like Nigeria's Delejiwa or the Nobe Zongos of the Burkina Faso. But a lot of people have been assaulted in the line of duty. I have, a lot of colleagues who have faced this situation. Mention can be made of my colleague Samson Ladi Aedini when he was at Love FM, Erasmus Asaredonko, or Hinin Tewia. Each of them has had one form of assault or the other in the line of their duties. So we are in an environment which looks friendly on the outside, but in the inside, there is a lot of hostility in there. And especially when the whole enterprise is cloaked along political lines, it makes it difficult for people to, if you like, work freely without looking, behind them to see who is coming. And that, I think, it is not a healthy situation. You remember situations where even after election results, journalists are attacked because one political party or the other has lost the election. You remember people can call on radio and attack people personally because of the work they do. The infamous Komla Dumo, you are a fool, rant is very, very fresh in our minds.
In our minds.
Because everybody thinks that, well, something the person has said or has done does not favor the political party he or she, if you like, is inclined to. So those are the difficulties we have.
Well, I think we should also hear from Saidu Bomanjo. He's also got some experiences to share. Saidu, if you're there, let's hear your experience as a journalist. How long have you been a journalist?
Well, I've been practicing for the past 20 years plus.
Wow.
And of the 20 years, I've done close to 18 years in the Upper West region.
Right.
And my experience in the Upper West region is that there was, when it comes to harassment, there was a situation where the police here came to a private radio station and took away their equipment. Why? Because they thought they were speaking against them. What happened on that particular day? They were saying that, a panelist was saying that they knew that the police here were part of a gang that were stealing motorbikes. So the police didn't have the patience to sort of understand them. So they came forcibly and took away their equipment. But I think that problem was resolved. Apart from that, there was no any thing that comes when it comes to harassment or something of the sort. But what is happening in the Upper West region, and I found very intriguing, journalists in this part of our country are not well resourced. For example, we have about 11 districts across the region. No journalist can on his own say, I'm traveling to, say, Hamley. Hamley from Wa to Hamley is about 84 miles. It is very difficult because apart from Wa, Naduli, and Jirapa, which has a third route, all the rest are not linked by any third route. So accessibility is very difficult. That's why sometimes I pat your correspondent, Rafiq Salam, for all that he does, because on his own, he uses his vehicle and all that to penetrate many, many areas. Now, you want to go to a place unless event organizers organize the means of transport for you to go. And that in itself, as a journalist, I don't find it very useful because sometimes you go to find certain things that are adverse towards events organizers. But for the fact that you've been part of their arrangement, it's difficult to come out and say exactly what it is. So I think that for us journalists in the Upper West region, it's not so much about physical harassment. It is that people are hindered in their ability to do the work as it is. One, they are poorly resourced. Means of movement is non-existent unless it is done on maybe some philanthropic basis or something of the sort. So I find that very quite intriguing and disturbing. Now, you also come into the region where journalists are practicing, and most of these radio stations are now privately owned, apart from the GBC here. And sometimes you hear colleague journalists complaining about the remuneration from their employer, which is something very quite worrying. So
it's such a big deal, Seydou, this remuneration. Talking about journalists going for events and, you know, ending up using their own monies or waiting for the event organizers to take care of their transportation. Sometimes it's very, very embarrassing. And just yesterday, I encountered one. I went for a program and this journalist from Asaman Kese, and he's waiting for his envelope and the envelope is not coming. He's now approaching organizers and they're like, we didn't prepare anything for you. And this is the journalist who is just left stranded, and he is like, so you're saying that I should come all the way from Asamankesi to this place, no transportation for me? No, it's so embarrassing and sometimes can be frustrating for the journalist who seeks to get information, disseminate to the community, educate the public. But of course, these are some of the hindrances for this journalist. Seydou, you were talking about Said. Let me come to Said Yaqub from Kumasi. You were talking about how we've chalked some success of becoming, you know, having some freedom in the media landscape. But of course, we have a lot more to do. How does it come across to you that Ghana is ranked 23 among 180 countries that were measured for media freedom? How does it come across to you that Ghana is ranked?
Well, you can look at it from two perspectives. Well, on one hand, you say we have done very well. On the other hand, we still have challenges, hurdles to clear. As I mentioned earlier, it is very difficult these days for journalists to speak or do their work without you having some kind of thinking about their political leanings. Even within our own selves, sometimes we fight over ethical issues. Your own colleague will chastise you for doing one story or the other. And then in the next moment, there's a change of government and that person is appointed a presidential staffer or whatever. So sometimes you find it difficult to tell the motive behind some of the stories we do, whether we are working for the people or for ourselves or for government. And that makes it difficult for you to assess our performance in a very candid way. You understand what I'm saying? So that is the issue. Yes, we are doing well, on one front, but on the other hand, we still have challenges, and those challenges are not only about the environment, but they are about ourselves, because people, seem to have special interest, personal interest in whatever they do. When people want favors from government, and that also will tell negatively on what they do.
All right, of course, what we do. And of course, one of the things I always would have, the questions I ask myself all the time when some of these attacks are meted out on journalists, that what can we do as journalists? How can we protect ourselves? But I would like us to go back to community radio before we even come to how journalists can protect ourselves. And at the launch of the Media Freedom Day today at Kempinski Hotel, there's been calls for us to pay attention to community radio. That should come as good news to you, Seydou.
Community radio in our part of the world operates very well. It has a geographic reach where it gives power and voice to the people. As to how that is used effectively is another matter. We have community radios here where people through programming have been able to expose a lot of things that are happening within the assembly. Currently, we're doing a program with the Media Foundation for West Africa, which is Time with Assembly. Now, for example, we go to a community like Wa West, where we discovered through community radio and giving voice to the people. They've built a school for the past, since 2015 at the lintel level. It's been standing there for a very long time. And the project has been abandoned by Get Fund, and we didn't know who was in charge and all that. So through this programming, giving voice to the people through community radio, we discovered that the project was under Get Fund. They started, and the contractor, since they started, was pre-financing the project, and there was no money, and so the school has been a standstill, and children are studying under trees. We saw it physically. Teachers were teaching under the tree, and teachers have tried to make a makeshift building by putting some structures with thatch roof. And while they are teaching, you will see scorpions falling off the roof and then sometimes biting them. These are the realities on the ground. Now you speak like this, and you give people the chance to say what it is through community radio, and they are able to expose some of these things. And in most cases, when the assembly or assemblies are able to get to know what is happening, they react positively. But community radio these days, like my colleague is saying in Kumasi, it's been politicized. I don't want to mention name. In the Upper West region here, we have so much to do, but politicization of programming is really a bother for us. Because you have a community where, I went to a community called Kujipiri, where a nurse a midwife would have to hold a torchlight in between her teeth to make a woman, to enable a woman to deliver. There's no light, there's nothing. And snake bite is very common in that community, especially during farming season. People go far away from home to farm, and when they get there, they can't come home, and they make some makeshift buildings, structures to sleep there, only for them to end up being bitten by snake. These are the problems we need to expose.
Pathetic.
But this issue about politicization of our community radio is a bother to me in the region here.
Right.
There are a lot of things that we can talk and expose what is happening so that people can get help. But we end up with this mainstream political argument, which takes us nowhere. So I think that community radio, yes, but the focus should be retuned so that people who work on community radio should be given the necessary training. Sometimes, what I've also found very bizarre is that people jump onto radio without the necessary training. I believe I've been trained from Ghana Institute of Journalism since 1995.
Right.
I don't think that's the ultimate. But the important thing to do is that if you want to learn on the job, come on the job, learn the ethics, and learn how to do programs, so that at the end of the day, the people will benefit from your effort. But that's not it. People come, particular government has done this, particular community radio, we are not giving voice to the people. So, and sometimes to the governance structure of some of these community radio leaves much to be desired. You have community radios around with board members that are never changing. And so they operate in one particular direction So they're looking forward as to how best they can improve performance and all that.
It's certainly a good call that's coming at the right time, that we should pay attention to community radio because it does a lot in the development of our society. But Said, he makes the point that journalists need to be trained. And I share in that view that there are a lot of people out there who are just put on radio that they are presenters and therefore they call themselves journalists. What do you think about journalists who should go through the appropriate training? And of course, I think that if we go through the right training and come out as a journalist, we may even avoid some of these attacks because we will know what to do at any point in time. And come out as a journalist.
Asha, that's a very huge problem confronting us. Journalism training has been thrown to the background in this country. You have situations where there are mushrooming training institutions which claim to be training people for 3 months, 6 months for a course that normally will run minimum 2 years, 3 years. And I think, authorities have not been able to deal with it. Journalism training, as far as we are concerned in this country, is a tertiary, program. Now you have situations where people go around and show GES approved schools and all that. I'm not sure under our laws GES approves, training for at a tertiary level
because it's a professional course as well.
Accreditation Board, but that is the situation in which we find ourselves, and then people are just plucked. Sometimes from the streets, and they put them there without training. So it's a very challenging situation. And then also, I think when you go to our legislation, for instance, the Media Commission, for instance, the national, the NCA is responsible for frequency allocation. Okay. And then you have the Media Commission, which is the one who has to manage content and if you monitor content. Exactly. So that becomes difficult. So the Media Commission is somehow, toothless when it comes to, enforcing the law. I am aware the Media Commission, for instance, some time ago launched what they call the guidelines for local language broadcast. And people have had a lot of problems with local language broadcast because of the way some of them carry their work. And as we speak now, the prescription is that whatever language you are broadcasting in, you have to be able to write that language as far as news presentation is concerned before you put it out in the public domain. But you have situations where people are holding scripts written in English language, and then they are reading directly from that script without writing the language, in which they are broadcasting. So that is a challenge.
That's unprofessional.
Until we are able to address these issues about training, these issues about who monitors media content and who allocates frequency and all that, we'll still have challenges ahead of us.
But one other challenge I see with some of these institutions that are supposed to be protecting us journalists, and I talk about the National Media Commission, I talk about Ghana Journalists Association, all the other stakeholders, they've now become a statement issuing institutions because they tell you they don't have the power to bite. And so the best they can do is to issue statements when journalists are attacked, when journalists are in trouble. I find this, it's so disheartening. When journalists are attacked, when journalists are in trouble. I find this, it's so disheartening.
Well, what else can they do when the laws don't favor them? I think we need to go back to the basis. Yes, people have to conform to the laws, but if they don't have the power to bite, and then sometimes they even invite people, and then people will not even come before them to address one issue or the other. That is a challenge. So I think we need to go back to the basis. For instance, the issue of frequency allocation and then the monitoring of media content is something that, if you like, is a paradox for me. So I think we need to go back to those areas and smoothing our laws and see if we can align frequency allocation, for instance, and the media content monitoring and management, for instance, then we can make progress. Otherwise, we'll continue, accusing each other of one breach of the law or the other.
Saidu, should we review some of our laws to enable some of these institutions have the power to bite? Saidu.
Yes, you take the case of the National Media Commission, Article 173. It says that the National Commission should not be hindrance. It didn't even say journalist. A person engaged in media work. What are we talking about? So I think that Media Commission, yes, but it has not been given the necessary power to buy. So and I think the framers of the Constitution were so careful about censorship that in all their writings within from Article 12, Chapter 12 of the Constitution, they were so careful as to not make somebody so powerful to be able to determine what is media content. I think that's the problem. But we have come a long way. 25 years on, what are we saying? The the Constitutional Review Commission, have they talked about some of these things? Do we need to go back to the drawing board and look at some of these problems, the loopholes, and plug them, and then know that indeed we need some of these things? All the functions of the National Media Commission have been listed in the Constitution. But are they enough to be able to help us run around? Now, my colleague talks about who is a journalist and the training institution. Actually, we are here. One day I just saw an advert in Y here. A man had just put up an advert to train people in the Upper West region. He's opening up one district, one in the Upper West region, and one municipal, Laura, and he's training people. So I just, out of curiosity, I said, let me apply to teach in that particular school. So when I called, the man was not picking, until I had him one day. He wasn't comfortable. Then later I made my own investigation and realized that he was not accredited. And yet in the Upper West region here, there are so many people attending the school and he's collecting money. And they are coming on attachment. What are they learning in the first place? Well, some of them come to our stations here, they say they are coming to do monitoring. And I ask them, what is monitoring? Is it same as attachment? They didn't know. So I think that sometimes radio owners or media owners, because of cheap labor, don't care much about the people, the caliber of people they employ, whether they are qualified or not. It doesn't matter. Once a very holy noise will be on air, they are okay with it. So I think that these are things that the Media Commission should sit back and then be empowered to be able to redraw and say, look, we need certain basic requirements. Who is a journalist in this country should be properly defined. For example, now where we sit, nobody can get up and say, I'm a lawyer, for the fact that he can argue in court and whatever it is.
Certainly.
Even if you're holding LLB, it doesn't make you a lawyer.
Exactly.
You can't go to court.
Exactly the point.
You need to go to do the qualifying certificate and then qualify to be called to the bar.
Definitely.
If you fail one paper, you can't go there.
Okay.
But journalists, it's not that. It's not like that.
Yeah.
We have people, when they fail maths and English at the SS level, they're able to get pen and paper on more so recorded, and they're even recording people secretly.
And I think it also comes back to the point that Said raised earlier on, that, of course, GES cannot just be sitting there and say, we have accreditation from GES to train journalists. It's just like saying that GES has given us accreditation to train lawyers, which is not, I mean, it doesn't work because it's a professional course.
You look at the structure. When it comes to law, we have the General Legal Council. In our
exactly.
Where is it?
Yes.
We don't have. The Medical Council is there. We have GJ, even some in the Upper West region here. We have so many journalists. Only 8 of us are in good standing and can vote.
Right.
So these are the problems. It's a thing that sometimes the GJ must.
But beyond all of this, beyond the fact that we journalists are calling for mechanisms to ensure that we have enough freedom in executing our duties. We're saying no to brutalities as journalists in line of duty. We're saying no to all the hindrances that, stop us from doing our jobs the way we should do. We, the journalists ourselves, I know, can also do something to protect ourselves. At least we can take some precautionary measures. Said, how can we as journalists prevent some of these attacks from happening to us? Said, how can we as journalists prevent some of these attacks from happening to us?
Well, I think the security experts will tell you that you are your own defense when it comes to security. We should be able to read our environment and see where we are going, what is ahead of us in terms of danger. But for me, all those things, sometimes they are unpredictable. You cannot tell what will happen to you. You may take all the precautions, all right, but you never know who has something bad against you and may confront you at one time or the other. But I think that for me, the most dangerous thing we may have to deal with has to do with, the attempt of the media to seek favors from government in the line of their duty. And for that matter, there are a whole lot of compromises here and there at the expense of the public good. That is what we need to guard against.
Seydou, how do we ensure that we journalists are protected ourselves?
The ethics of the profession should be at our firm grip. Now, a lot more journalists are in the system. You talk about ethics. It has never heard about it. We have the International Federation of Journalists, their ethics are there. The GJA ethics are there. Are we learning them? Now, we need to also see the borderline. For example, how many journalists have even participated in police simulation exercise? So now they will know that when we are involved in a certain situation, there's a borderline between what you can do and what you cannot do. These are the things. Now, people try to make martyrdom out of nothing. He wants to be heard, so he will take up the trouble to the police. First and foremost, I always tell people that if you sit behind a console and you don't handle yourself very well with rioting or whatever, if you die, we'll replace it. It's possible because you're not a really person. So what do? Protect yourself, learn the trade, be on guard, and then help yourself. Because even if you are injured, we'll come and talk about it. At the end of it, maybe you say, yes, the Attorney General will take up the case. In future, when they say, nolly prosecute, we are no longer interested in the case. What is your fee? You will not get compensation. You get nothing. So I think that journalists must first and foremost grasp the the ethics of the profession. They should have it at the fingertips and know it by heart. That's like 1, 2, 3. Otherwise, anything you do short of that, you cannot. As we state in Upper West Region here, violations of human rights is very rampant by journalists. People just put out everything on air without cross-checking. They write and do all sorts of things. So I have a proverb in my language which says, we don't tie one yam. If there's a problem, get to the other side, talk both sides, and allow the public to make their judgment. That's the problem of journalism in this country. People try to force people to believe in what they are saying when the facts are out there for them to set it out for people to make fair judgment.
Well, we journalists are not stopping here. The fight continues. We'll keep on pressing. We'll keep on reminding those who are concerned to ensure that we have a total freedom environment for journalists to operate in. Many thanks to you, gentlemen. Ali Yakub Said is news editor for Love FM, our sister station, and Seydou Bomanjo is administrator of GBC Upper West Region. And as we gear up for the World Press Freedom Day tomorrow, we're also reminding the Ghana Police Service to expedite action or expedite their investigation into attacks on multimedia journalist Lateef Idris. We are saying that we are getting impatient, we are losing our patience, and we want the IGP to act now. We're still on the pulse and we're still talking Media Freedom Day.